If the left thought the topic of illegal immigration was migrating toward the bottom of Donald Trump's list of priorities, they may want to make travel plans of their own because, as Miranda Kahn reports, Republicans appear to be moving full steam ahead with the president-elect's agenda. The question at this point is just how many Democrats might hop on board.
Well, JD, if the Big Apple and the Windy City are any indication, don't count on it.
What we are going to do is get the people that are criminal and have criminal records, we're getting them out of our country. They're here illegally.
Donald Trump's tough stance on illegal immigration continues to send ripples across the country, with some Republican leaders vowing to back the president-elect while still saying Republicans and Democrats can find common ground.
This is just enacting current law into the process.
But one issue neither party seems to be in agreement with, the issue of sanctuary cities.
President-elect Trump should wait until he's in office and work with congressional leaders to cut off federal funds to cities that refuse to cooperate with ICE and with other law enforcement agencies to get these lawless, illegal aliens out of our country.
Suggestions like this one have Democratic mayors of these cities scrambling to calm fears. From New York,
we, for example, believe fundamentally in respecting the rights of all New Yorkers, including those who are undocumented.
To Chicago.
To be clear about what Chicago is, it always will be a sanctuary city.
And it's making them a prime target for Republicans.
And I think Rahm Emanuel needs to focus on the security of Chicago, the number of murders that are taking place there.
And some new developments about House Speaker Paul Ryan. Today, he won his GOP colleagues' votes for another term. Ryan also recently weighed in on the issue of illegal immigration, but he seemed to take a much softer approach than our president-elect, focusing more on the border than the undocumented workers who are here.
We are not planning on erecting a deportation force. Donald Trump's not planning on that, and we're focused on securing the border. We think that's first and foremost, before we get into any other immigration issue. We got to know who's coming and going in the country. We've got to secure the border.
So we'll see what happens. JD, back to you.
And we should note, Miranda, that Paul Ryan received the unanimous nomination of his Republican Party members to be the Speaker again in the next Congress. For more on today's Political Pulse, we're pleased to be joined by Newsmax TV political analyst Dick Morris, who is Skyping in tonight. As always, Dick, we appreciate your time on Newsmax Prime. Here we are, 66 days until Mr. Trump takes the oath of office, and corporate media is already preparing for and earnestly hoping for his failure. For example, the Politico Playbook, a Washington tip sheet popular amongst journalists, says it's betting several of Trump's key planks will, quote, fall on their face. And the New York Times writes the national press has it very grim these days. Your take, even with the Times admitting that, okay, we weren't so objective about the Trump campaign, can we expect them to be more objective in chronicling the Trump administration?
No, of course not. The New York Times always confuses its front page with the obituary page, and is always consigning Donald Trump to the latter. Look, let's go to immigration, the issue you were talking about. There are currently about a quarter of the total inmates in federal prison, about 60 out of the 200,000, are illegal immigrants who committed violent crimes who are now locked up in prison, not for being here illegally, but for the crimes they committed. At the moment when they're released, they are normally handed over to the ICE for deportation, except if they're in a sanctuary city, they are not given over to ICE, they're released onto the streets, except that if they come from certain countries like Haiti, which refuse to readmit them, they're released back to ICE and released onto the streets. Trump will end all of this. This is not a Gestapo-style raid in everybody's home. This is simply standing at the jailhouse door and collecting them as they leave and deporting them. And if a country refuses to take them, Trump will deal with that country diplomatically, probably by cutting off their foreign assistance budget, $500 million in most cases. If it's in sanctuary cities and the sanctuary city refuses to cooperate, Trump will cut off aid to that sanctuary city, billions of dollars. So Trump's going to have his way, and we'll get rid of those folks. And when Ryan said the issue is at the border, no, the issue is at the border, but also in the prisons throughout the United States.
Well, Paul, of course, was just repeating that poll-tested phrase, quote, "we must secure the border." That's what guys always retreat to when they're a bit hesitant to go along. And yet, it's almost like the two faces of Paul Ryan, because today the speaker had a fairly upbeat tone with the House members as he talked about the dawn of a new unified Republican government. Here is also what he had to say about working with the president-elect.
We're on the same page with our president-elect. I talk with Donald Trump virtually every single day. I spoke with Mike Pence this morning. We are on the same page. We're working hand in glove, and we're going to make sure that this is a very successful administration. But more importantly, we're going to make sure that the voices we heard from this election for the American people are acted upon, that we actually fix these country's problems.
Now, a lot of us have been skeptical because Speaker Ryan was so hesitant to hop on board the Trump train. But now, as we face the specter of the Trump administration, do you expect Speaker Ryan to be a full partner with President Trump after January 20th?
I really do. I think that Ryan's approach will be very similar, and Trump's approach will be similar to Obama's. Where on health care reform and Dodd-Frank, his two main legislative achievements, if he called them that, he basically called the leaders of Congress in, the Democrats, and said, this is what I want to achieve. Go design me a bill that'll pass. And they did, with relatively little input from the administration, except to make sure their fundamental principles were honored in the bill, which they were, and then it passed and he signed it. I think that's how Trump is going to treat Ryan and McConnell. The thing that I'm concerned about is that he does not control the Senate. You need 60 votes to control the Senate, and we'll have only 52. And to do that, the Senate Democrats can filibuster anytime that they want and stop legislation. Now, some things like health care reform or the budget can be gotten through under a fiscal reconciliation and just take 51 votes, but that's rare. I believe that high on the agenda is Trump and McConnell have got to get together and repeal the filibuster. Make it that 51 votes is all you need to pass the Senate, or 50 with the vice president's concurrence. Unless they do that, they're headed for more and more gridlock. And JD, I gave the same speech to Bill Clinton in 1992, and many of his programs failed because he didn't heed the advice, and it remained a 60-vote threshold.
All right. Well, you offered the advice back then. You offer it again now. We'll see what transpires in the Senate and in the White House and in the House of Representatives in the days ahead. Dick Morris, as always, we appreciate your time on Newsmax Prime. Thanks again. Up next, Donald Trump continues the transition. Who will be in his cabinet? Who's out of consideration? All that and more as we continue tonight on Newsmax Prime.